Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Commander's Forge. I am your host, Andy Bentley, and the Commander's Forge is an area for me to talk about Magic, Commander, and anything else that I feel like. Now, today, I just want to touch on a couple of things, starting with a game tournament thing that I'm going to in Rochester over the weekend. Dean Goody is doing another Commander sealed thing now that people are vaccinated and stuff like that. And that's this Saturday, so I'm actually recording this a little earlier than usual so I can still try and get stuff out on time. I don't actually know, all of the packs we're going to get, but it's a good amount of packs. I do know there's going to be a number of Commander Legend packs included in what we open. That way we're guaranteed to get a good selection of legendary creatures. And yeah, that's basically it. I'll probably end up cutting some stuff into the end of this episode. Probably early Sunday, just to kind of touch back on this and talk about how I did and what I played. But what I really want to talk about right now is Archidekt has rolled out a feature that I'm pretty sure is only on mobile so far, because when I tried to look it up on a computer, I couldn't find it. But they've added a salt scale to your decks, just based on, their perception of what cards make people salty. So I was looking through there. It was also a good reminder that I actually have to kind of go in there and update some decks, because there's a few decks in there that aren't together anymore because I took them apart to build other stuff, and there's some stuff in there that's just not together at all anymore, and I've updated a couple of decks since then. But more about that in a minute. Going through my decks, particularly the ones that I still have together and have been playing and stuff, the highest salt score I had was 46.12 with my Adeliz the Cinderwind deck, and the lowest I had was General Tazri at 16.71. So we're going to go through and just do a little comparison of the two. And we're going to start with Adeliz. See, Adeliz has a sub-theme of wizards, and then namely, it just wants to start casting as many spells as possible, get as many triggers as possible, and then start doming people out. That said, I can imagine where most of the salt comes from in this list. Stuff like Tybalt's Trickery, 1 red for an instant, counter target spell, choose 1, 2, or 3 at random. Its controller mills that many cards, then exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card with a different name than that spell. They may cast that card without paying its mana cost, and then they put the exiled cards on the bottom of their library in any order. To top that off, we have stuff like Counterspell, 2 blue for an instant, counter target spell. Pact of Negation, 0 mana, instant counter target spell, but at the beginning of your next upkeep, pay 3 blue. If you don't, you lose the game. Fierce Guardianship is an instant for 2 and a blue, but if you control your commander, you may cast a spell without paying its mana cost, and it counters a non-creature spell. Mana Drain is 2 blue for an instant counter target spell at the beginning of your next main phase. Add amount of colorless to your mana pool equal to the spell's converted mana cost. So yeah, I understand counterspells make people salty. I know if I'm playing against somebody that's just doing counterspells, I get pretty salty. So I make sure not to run too many in here, but I am running some of the more powerful ones, along with stuff like Cyclonic Rift, Jessica's Will, Deflecting Swat, Past in Flames. And the real goal of the deck is to play Adeliz, play a couple other creatures, namely Veyrin, Voice of Duality, which is one a blue and a black, blue and a red for a 2/2. With Magecraft, which is whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, Veyrin gets +1/+1 till end of turn. And if you casting or copying a spell or sorcery spell, a instant or sorcery spell causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. This means when you have Adeliz and Veyrin out, you cast one spell, Veyrin is going to get +3/+3, Adeliz is going to give everybody else +2/+2. So, stuff like that. Snapcaster Mage is in here, Dreadhorde Arcanus. Like, it just wants to play as many spells as possible, recur as many spells as possible, and hey, maybe take somebody out with a grape shot. That's basically all there is to Adeliz. I wouldn't necessarily call her a one-trick pony, but it's what she does. Now, General Tajri is super low on the salt scale, and I think it's probably because this is not the General Tajri list like you would see usually out there, where it's running like a bunch of infinite combos to just win. No, I'm playing allies, with such hits like Kazandu Blade Master, which is a 2-mana 1/1 with First Strike and Vigilance, but it grows. Or Hada Freeblade, which is an 0/1 for a single mana, but it grows. Or Kabira of Angel, it's a 3-mana 2/3, but he gives your team protection from colors. Chasm Guide, 4-mana 3/2 that gives all your creatures haste. Resolute Blade Master, 5-mana 2/2, but whenever allies enter, he gives your creatures double strike till end of turn. Drana, Liberator of Malakir, she just starts throwing counters on everything. I do think where a lot of the salt for this deck comes in is mostly in the artifacts. Things like Panharmonicon to double up triggers. Conjurer's Closet to double up triggers. We typically just use that one for the commander to dig out more, but regardless. Home of the Host to double up on triggers. And Blade of Selves to, you guessed it, quadruple up on triggers. And things like Reflections of Littjara, which is just a crazy card. Namely because it makes copies of creature spells, which is just wild what they're doing today in Magic. Tajri is still together. She doesn't get played much. Namely because I can't seem to settle on a decent mana base I want to do. Currently it's running the Gates combo as a backup win condition. That's probably not going to stick around, but I don't know what I want to do with it, so she's kind of been on the back burner for a little bit. But yeah, that's basically it for this part. And I'll touch back in a couple of days.
Hey, did you know that for as little as $1 a month, you can help support this podcast? All you have to do is go to patreon.com/commandersforge, and that is CMDR_forge. That's it. That's all I got to say about it. If you want to help support the podcast, you can go there.
And welcome back. Now, it's been a couple of days since the beginning of this recording, and I want to talk about the Commander Sealed event that I went to in Rochester. So, it was a tournament setup. It was single elimination. If you won in your first pod, you moved on to the next pod. If you won in that pod, you went on to the third pod. Unfortunately, me and my cousin did not win our first games, but that also kind of meant that we got to get home at a reasonable time. That said, my pod had a Kediss Emberclaw familiar partnered with Inara Wolfid familiar, a Kolfinor the Last U, Karadar the Ghost Chieftain, and I was playing Grumgully the Generous. And it was nowhere near a blowout. We went back and forth a lot. The Kediss Inara player did 17 damage to everybody in one turn. That put us all pretty low, but then we kind of dealt with him. But what happened was the Karador player just kind of kept getting value onto the board and then played Akroma's will with a lot of creatures on board. So that's about how my game went. But again, like, we were all doing stuff that game, and it was a fun game. And it was good to see Dean again. I saw a couple of people from my LGS. Actually, the guy I lost to, Eric Nowicki, is from Western New York Gaming, which is where I know him from. And it was a good time all around. Everybody there was vaccinated, and a lot of people were still wearing masks. We were very safe about it. And the event was hosted at Just Games in Rochester. The entire event was to raise money for the Trevor Foundation. And then on top of everything that Dean had collected, the shop itself was donating 10% of all sales from that day to it as well. And from what I understand, they had raised over $3,000. I don't know the actual number. You would have to contact Dean to figure that out. You can find him on Twitter at Grubfellow. Now, if you want to see what packs I opened, I actually have a picture of it on my Twitter. And that was the event. It was a lot of fun. And my pool wasn't super crazy. But as I sat there and looked at it, I realized I had the Grumgully, and I had a bunch of stuff that just wasn't humans. And was it running a ton of rares? No, but I did have a Nissa Who Shakes the World, and a Jessica Thrice Reborn. And my curve was ridiculous. I had like 8 or so 1-drops into like 12 2-drops. It was not a great commander deck, but it was a sealed deck, so it's not that bad. And actually, you can find that deck on my Architect. I posted it there so that Dean could get it, so he could share it, where he's sharing all of the different deck lists. It was a deck I definitely wouldn't have built. Like, I don't even know if I would build Grumgully. Of course, that doesn't help that I haven't been able to find a Gruul deck that I'm happy with in Commander. I say that after having 2 Rada decks, and both of them being torn apart. One was a Lands Matters deck that got torn apart to build Tasigur Lands and Turns. And the other one was just like a big, beady Gruul deck, and I just wasn't happy with it. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. We're definitely gonna be doing it again, and when he does it again, and everybody hopes for better, and that's all there is to it. I guess at this point, if you enjoyed it, hit the like button wherever you happen to be. If you're on YouTube, consider subscribing. And I think I'll see you next time. That brings us to the end of the podcast. I would like to thank Nate and Erica Jacobs for designing my logo, and Cody Mulpey and Ian Foss for allowing me to use a sample of music from their band, The Crypt. The podcast can be found on YouTube by searching Commander's Forge. The podcast is Commander's Forge, that is CMDR_Forge on Twitter. I can be found on Twitter at BentzMr, that is BENTZMR. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time, and until then, here's to fun games and sick plays.